Hi, and welcome to the Thriving and Surviving podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Markson, and I'm a mum, an entrepreneur, a coach, and most importantly, I'm someone that loves to make waves, break stigmas, and challenge beliefs. Think of this podcast as a wine and cheese night with your besties, sharing your deepest and darkest thoughts and struggles, but also learning a thing or two. So whether you're thriving or just surviving, this podcast is here to enlighten you, heighten you, and most certainly brighten you. So let's dive right in, and I'm so glad you're here.
Welcome back to episode 3 of the Thriving and Surviving podcast. So in this episode, I'm going to be diving into, I did allude to it in the first episode, that I would do a whole episode around competing and what that was like, getting back in the arena, so to speak. So that is what this episode is going to be going into, how I managed to get back on stage whilst my life was chaos. So for starters though, I will just say that I definitely would not have been able to do it alone. It was definitely one of those things where it took a village, and I absolutely lent on my village to make it happen. So normal amounts of gym, I can make work on my own with the girls, whether that's getting in a session after or before I pick them up from daycare, or, you know, if there's an odd day here or there where, you know, my parents can watch them and I can duck to the gym. It's manageable. It's for normal goals. I can still get there between 3 to 5 times a week, depending on the week. And that is okay for around that hour mark. However, the demands of prep, and for those of you that haven't competed, buckle up. It was a lot. So towards particularly in the back end of prep, because for me, I personally find it easier to have a higher training output and keep my calories that little bit higher than lean further into my deficit with my nutrition. So obviously, you know, to lose weight, you need a calorie deficit. I feel like everyone knows that by now. And you can create that calorie deficit by either increasing your energy expenditure, so, you know, your training, your steps, or decreasing your food. And I would rather do this one for many reasons. Like from a health perspective for women, this is actually better for our bodies doing it this way. However, for me, psychologically, I also find that a lot easier. I find that if I get too restrictive with my food, it absolutely triggers me to go into binges. And that's something that I didn't want to do. I mean, not that anyone wants to bloody have binges, but I know initially when people said, you know, are you going to compete again? For a period there, I had actually decided I wasn't going to. I thought I was going to. I had it all locked in, as I said in the first episode. But then once I actually had my daughters, I was really concerned that given what my previous preps had been like, where I was on very low calories, I was emotional, I was snappy, I was binge eating, I was throwing it back up again. Like, I really struggled. And I was like, there is no way that I would want to demonstrate those behaviors in front of my daughters. Like, I refuse to let comp prep and getting on stage be something where I bring all of these negative relationships around food into our household for them to watch. And I was also really conscious that the most insecure I had ever felt about my body was when I was actually competing last, when I was at my leanest. I have been my most confident self postpartum, ironically. Having kids for me completely shifted my mindset from being more focused on what my body can do rather than what it looked like. And like having that little switch, I just cared less. Like, I don't care that I've got stretch marks. Like, I don't care if I was heavier. Like, I made little people like sue me. So I don't know, like for me, like it didn't really bother me. But I remember how insecure I was. And I always come back to this one photo. I remember this one photo that Tommy took of me, and I was sitting down and I could see, like, it was literally skin rolls. I was so lean. It was after comp. It wasn't even fat. It was skin rolls. And I was so freaked out by it that I was trying to like face tune and like smooth out my skin rolls, because I was like, oh my God, I look so fat. Like, I was committable. So given that I have such a positive relationship with my body, with food, I was like, oh, like, what if prep undoes all of that? What if you end up feeling about your body the way that you used to feel about your body when you compete? What if you can't keep a cap on your emotions and, you know, you get snappy with the kids and you're spiraling? Like, what if it makes you a bad mum? So these were all things where I was like, oh, like, I probably won't compete just in case. But then obviously when I got in my head, you know, I actually think I can do this. And I think having the girls will actually be a strength, because it will hold me accountable in how I do this prep, to hold me accountable to do this prep in the healthiest way possible. It'll hold me accountable to still prioritize the relationship I have with food and my body. It won't let me sink into this I will do whatever it takes to win headspace, which can be really damaging when you start prioritizing placings or physiques over wellness factors, which is what I absolutely used to do. So I was like, do you know what? Like, if anything is more important to me, like, it is them. So like, I was pretty confident I could do it, and I did. But in part of my strategy was, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to be eating under 1,000 calories or any of these, you know, crazy things that I did in other preps. Like, I'm going to really prioritize keeping my food as high as possible, because I know for me, it is a big factor in how it impacts me psychologically, with both my mood and my eating habits. So it did mean I needed to do a lot more training and a lot more steps than what I have ever done in a prep. And the steps ended up being the easiest one of the two, which is funny, because I remember in other preps where I had coaches say, you know, do 10,000 steps. I was like, you don't understand. I have a desk job. Like, I could never. And I still have the same desk job, like, at the fire department. So I kind of laugh at myself that I couldn't do 10,000 steps, when at the end of this last prep, I ended up at 20,000 towards the end. Like, the last couple of weeks, I was doing 20,000 steps a day, which is insane. But it was a lot easier to achieve, because, to be honest, since having children, I rarely do under 10,000 steps anyway. My average is probably 12,000 just from parenting. That's without even trying. So it wasn't as big of a jump. It's not like I went from 5,000 to 20,000. So it was still like a progressive increase. But the way that I actually achieved that was getting a walking pad. So the amount of steps I used to do of a night time, like once I'd put the girls to sleep, that's where I had to make up the amount of steps I was short on. And depending on my day, sometimes that was 30 minutes, sometimes that was close to 2 hours of walking to make up those steps. So because I obviously needed to try and prioritize sleep, because my girls get up quite early, it made me very conscious to do everything I could possibly do in my day-to-day to get up as many steps as possible. So then there was obviously a lot less for me to do at night once they went to bed. So we parked further away in the shopping centres. We walked to play groups, you know, we walked to friend catch-ups, like anything that I could possibly walk with. We walked to and from daycare pickups, everything. I was like, steps. And I mean, the girls loved it. It just meant things took a lot longer, because Chili's pace and my pace are vastly different. But yeah, we got in a lot of steps. And some of those things now, like, we still do the daycare walks, and a lot of those things that I implemented in prep to increase my energy expenditure are things that I'm maintaining and sustaining post-show. Obviously, not everything is. I'm obviously not going to keep doing 20,000 steps. But during prep, probably the last month, I was doing, like, going to the gym, and I was there for almost 3 hours between doing the cardio that I was having to do, getting in some steps, plus my actual workout. And that's a lot of time. So how I actually managed to do that, and this is where like I'm very grateful, but I ended up having my dad took some time off work where he was able to come and stay so that I could leave early in the morning, go get my training in. He was there to watch the kids. Whereas, you know, beforehand when Tommy and I were together, like I used to go train at 4 a.m. and like I could get up earlier. I could go train at 3 a.m. if I wanted to have a giant session because there was someone else there while the kids were sleeping. But obviously on my own, it's not like I can just head off to the gym with the baby monitor. Like I can't leave them at home alone. So that one was a very hard pill to swallow when we first split, because I don't train in the afternoon with my body and my arthritis. My body gets so inflamed during the day just from me living my life that the range of movement I actually get through my joints decreases during the day. So trying to do afternoon or nighttime training sessions, they are twice as painful and way more ineffective. So training first up is just, it's what works for me. It's how I love to start my day. I feel like my motivation goes down through the day as well. So I'm a first thing in the morning kind of gal, but being able to do that on your own, challenging. So I always have a cranking Google Calendar, let's be real, but my Google Calendar, I would sit there at the beginning of the week and I would map out every single gym session where I was going to fit it in and book it in there like an appointment. And then I put my driving in as well. I've got a special little label color for driving just so I'm factoring in travel everywhere. And I would map that out the beginning of the week as my non-negotiable. And look, obviously, if a kid was sick and then suddenly everything's derailed, like it is what it is. And that was definitely a big learning, this prep, because previously in all of my other preps, I got to be 100% selfish and I loved it. But this prep was very different. Like I was still just having to do the best I could with what I had. And that was really hard. I am a competitive person, and a big part of bodybuilding, and you'll probably see a lot of competitors do this and talk about this, is they talk about bringing their best package to stage. I'm bringing my best package. This is my best package yet, because bodybuilding is this, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's where, you know, you're consistently having on seasons, off seasons, you're working on your body, you're improving things about your physique, where it's just, and it's what I love about it the most, to be honest. It's the journey that's associated with the actual sport itself. So it was hard when the package I was bringing to stage this time wasn't going to beat my last one, or not conventionally beat. Ironically, I actually did like it more in the end. I feel like having the girls sort of widened my hips a little bit, which I really like that shape. I've always been really jealous of like hourglass shapes, and I feel like my hips are a little bit wider. And because they're a little bit wider, I feel like it made my waist look a little bit smaller. So like ratio wise, I was like not mad about it. It's fine. But I did have, you know, a lot more weight to lose. I had a lot of loose skin, all of the stretch marks, which whilst they're things that genuinely do not bother me, from a bodybuilding perspective, it's things, skin elasticity is part of your marking criteria, skin movement, all of that thing. I was annoyed because there were things that I knew were going to impact how well I did, but they weren't things within my control. And that was frustrating because it wasn't even a case of I just need to work harder. I can't magically tighten the skin across my stomach. Like I stretched, like your gal was over 100 kilos pregnant. Like it is what it is. So I think I ended up working out from my heaviest to stage weight. I ended up having to lose 45 kilos. And I didn't do that overnight. And I didn't even do that in 6 months, because I knew that if I lost that much weight in 6 months, the amount of loose skin I would have would be insane. So I intentionally staggered that over a 2-year period. Well, a bit less than 2 years, probably a year and a half, because Chile will be 2 this week. So maybe in a year and a half, I gradually lost all of that weight. And that's another thing, is not only was this prep not the best, to be honest, starting point from a lifestyle perspective, given that, you know, everything was chaotic and horrible and I was in a really bad place mentally. But from a health perspective, I just come off the back end of doing like pretty much a year-long deficit, losing all of this baby weight. And normally in a pre-prep, or when you're going to start your prep, you're wanting to be eating as high calories as possible and training as little as possible. So, and maintaining your weight. So if you're sitting at that, at a reasonable body fat percentage, that is a really great place to start your prep in, because then you've got all of this room to move by decreasing your food, increasing your training to create that deficit and, you know, get down to quite a lean body fat percent. But I did not do that. And because my anxiety was so bad at the beginning of the year, there were days where I was struggling to eat 1,000 calories because I would just vomit. I was that anxious. And I was like, this is the worst starting point for a prep I can possibly think of. And if a client came to me and said, I want to prep, this is what I'm doing, I would say, absolutely not. Terrible idea. So I knew that. I knew it was a bad starting point. I knew everything was pretty much stacked against me, I knew it was a terrible idea, but I was like, you know, I'm going to do it. And I still don't regret doing it. But there was definitely times during prep where I would get frustrated, where I was like, oh, like this, that, and the other. And that's where Maddie was really great, because she's like, yeah, but you knew this. You knew when you started this that, you know, X, Y, Z, you knew that you weren't starting at the best calorie point. You know, you knew that things were crazy. You knew you were going to have all of this stress. And I'm like, I know, just validate me and pat me on the back and tell me I'm pretty. I don't know. It was hard. And I think that's where with prep, it's one of those things where you don't want to be the person that complains when you choose to do it. Like, prep is a choice. So don't go around, you know, bitching and moaning how hard it is when, you know, it's not compulsory. You're choosing to do the thing. But trying to sit with it and work with what I had, I definitely had to adapt. And look, it's funny because I tell this to my clients, and it was one of those things where I had to really practice what I preach, where if you only have 30% that day and you give 30%, that was 100. And I definitely had to learn to sit in that, where I was like, do you know what? No one can help me today. I can't get to the gym. The kids are sick. It is what it is. Am I going to absolutely nail my nutrition? Yep. Am I going to get as many steps around the house as I can? Yep. Will I at least hit my steps and do a little bit once the girls go to sleep? Do you know what? Yep, I can do that. It's not perfect. And I think there was a big part of me, because obviously when I was doing the prep, I was also doing it with a couple of my friends as well. So Ali, Maddie, and Caitlin were all competing in the same show, and they were all prepping. And whilst I'm in my salty little, I wish I could just go to the gym and do my session, but because of my commitments or responsibilities, like, I can't do that. And then they'll be like, I'm just at the gym. Look at me. And I was just like, fuck you guys. And so there was definitely this little part of me that was this little bit bitter, where I was like, oh, like, you're getting to do all of the things I wish I was doing, and you're having the prep that I wish I was having, other than Maddie's digestive issues. I was not jealous of those. But that was really hard for me for a period there, because it was almost like when I just stayed in my little bubble, like head down, bum up, like I could just sort of accept it. And I was sort of ignorant to everyone else, because when I prep, I'm not someone that stalks the socials of the competitors and goes deep on the gram, like, mainly because I just don't have time. I am honestly too busy. I don't have time to do that competitor stalk spiral. So like, I was kind of ignorant to anyone else's prep, but because I was very in the loop with my friends and they're like, oh, this, that, and the other, I was like, oh, like, my jealousy of your prep is insane. And that was something that I was really having to work through, because I was like, well, it's not their fault. It's not their fault that you're a single mom. So you need to just embrace it and be supportive and not be that person. But it was definitely something I really struggled with, because the rest of it, normally I don't. Like, obviously there's a million things all my friends go and do, and I just can't do them because I'm a single mum and I don't have the dad there to take them at will. There is a degree of flexibility sometimes, but it is it is not the same. And that's definitely something I've had to adjust to this year. And so obviously, you know, we did the October show at the Gold Coast. Originally, I did really want to do the London show, but it just became apparent. I was like, that's going to be A, too expensive, and B, the logistics of the care for the kids. I was like, be real. Like, you're not going to be able to do that, but you'll be able to do the Gold Coast show. Like, that's manageable. And that was on a weekend that I was supposed to have the kids. So Tommy had agreed to have them the extra, like that weekend. So I had comp weekend without the girls because there is no way that it was hard enough having them through peak week. But there was no way that I was going to be able to manage having them show day. So he had them that weekend, which was really good. And look, do I think I was my best parenting self in prep? No, but I'm not mad at how well I managed it. I feel like it was just right at the end. They probably were at daycare a little bit more than usual. I didn't pick them up early as often because I was like, I feel so tired and depleted, and I feel like I'm not as fun as what I normally am. So I know you're having fun at daycare. I'm not going to bring you home early if I can't match that and be as fun. So they did spend a little bit more time at daycare, which I did feel really guilty about. But in my mind, I was like, well, this is only for this short little period. And then once this is out of the way, like I've got all these little trips planned with them and like lots of quality time. Cause I was like, okay, like we're just going to push through this last little bit. I maintained my relationship with food, which I'm really happy about. There was definitely a couple of times where I ate over my calories, but I was like, well, you did that. You're going to absorb these calories and you're just going to start tomorrow like a new day. You're not going to overly restrict tomorrow. You're absolutely not going to go purge them up again because you made the commitment that if you do this prep, you are not going to indulge in any of those disordered eating. You're not going down that rabbit hole. You're not going to ever have the girls watch you look in the mirror and tear your body apart. They're never going to see you step on the scales and say something negative about yourself. It will not happen. And it didn't. And I'm really grateful that I still maintained this really positive relationship with my body through the prep. I maintained that scales is data. It's just a number. I'm recording it because it's a metric that I need to make informed decisions about my programming. But it is what it is. It is what it is. And, you know, the girls obviously saw me get on the scales and they're like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, I'm just seeing like how heavy I am. Like, I just want to know what I weigh. And they're like, oh, that's interesting. I was like, yeah, it is. And that's it. Like, there was no negative reactions at all to any scales. And I tried to just keep it very neutral because I didn't really want weighing to be something that, you know, is very prominent, or I just do it when they weren't home. So they didn't think I was, you know, weighing things all the time. But yeah, we did a lot of focus on muscles and eating protein because it grows our muscles and it's healthy and it makes us feel good. And the way I talk about food with the girls is definitely like, we eat to feel good, gives us energy, we grow our muscles. So I actually feel like as a whole, I managed to execute the prep within the boundaries that I had set for myself. And I think for me, like, whilst I'm obviously like, I loved getting back up on stage and like, it's my hobby. It's my passion. It's what I enjoy doing. But I think out of everything, I'm most grateful that I managed to do a healthy prep because I have never done one before. I've put a lot of clients through healthy preps, but obviously never having prepped myself and never having the boundaries that I had never done a prep like that. And I'm very proud that I managed to do it. And then obviously you would have seen that I went to Dubai, and that was crazy. So I'd never planned on going to Dubai. Like, I would have loved to have. We talked about it and I was like, would love to do that. But, you know, I've got work, I've got the kids. I can't do the expense. Like, it's just not on the cards for me. So Maddie and Caitlin were going over to Dubai and they were doing the Dubai show. So it backed onto the Gold Coast a week later. And then Caitlin's dad is not well and he wasn't doing too well at the time, and she didn't want to because she wasn't from the Gold Coast, so she was already having to go away to the Gold Coast show. And then there was obviously this Dubai trip, and then we were going away again for Maddie's 30th to the Cook Islands, which was super fun. So with that, she was like, I can't go away again for that. But everything had sort of already been paid for. And she also felt really bad, like leaving Maddie to go to Dubai by herself, because that's a bit scary, I suppose. Even though Maddie loves traveling solo, she probably would have been fine. But she'd sort of said, like, do you want to take my spot? Everything's paid for, like you've got your flights and everything. Like, what do you think? And I was like, oh, like, I paced around my house at like top speed. I was shaky, like my anxiety, because I didn't even do last minute plans. It doesn't matter if they're positive or negative. I do not like last minute changes or plans. It is a huge part of my OCD. It's the way I map out and control every hour of every day, which I'm working on, but it sent me. And it was no notice. It was like a couple of days before flying out. And I was like, so I had already taken some leave from work at that point. So I wasn't working. I'd taken some leave just because I felt like a heap of things had sort of caught up with me. And I was like, I need to catch my breath. This 6 months or 10 months at that point had been so taxing that I was like, I feel like I need a second. I just need a second to like reset and then I'll be good. So I was like, oh, like I am off work. It is largely paid for. And then it just came down to mainly Tommy and him taking the kids, and it wasn't an excited yay, but he did eventually agree that he would have them extra so that I could go over to Dubai. We were there about a week, I think, head over to Dubai, and Maddie had planned this whole itinerary for after show, which she was very, very excited about. The amount of the shit that she sent me, forwarding me all of these videos and memes on Instagram was like very constant for ages, because she was already sending it to me, all of these things she had planned with Caitlin. And then she was like, oh, yay, like you're getting to enjoy them now. I was like, okay, like this will be good. So I borrowed Ali's bikini because I wasn't going to pay like thousands for a new bikini. So I just borrowed Ali's bikini. I borrowed one of Maddie's spare dresses for the dress because, again, I didn't have anything planned because I wasn't planning on doing it. And then we flew over to Dubai and did the Dubai show. And I actually haven't done an international show before. I've flown and traveled to compete within Australia back when I was competing in IFBB, but I hadn't done an international show. So that in itself was a very exciting experience that I'm very grateful for. And that was obviously the first FMG show in Dubai. A lot of the Australian team, like the tanning team and all that sort of thing, went over there, which was great. Love working with them. But I didn't really know what to expect. It was a lot smaller than the Gold Coast show, and so it was a lot faster paced than what Maddie and I were expecting. But I think I'm going to do an episode with Maddie where we'll just like bounce around and like really go into like what that was like between competing within Australia and overseas, and what the new FMG Federation is like, because it is only the second year of FMG. So as everyone knows, like, it takes a little bit to nail executing something new. But they did a really, really, really good job. I loved it. So we did the Dubai show, coming back, and then obviously we had Maddie's birthday, but then the reverse. I am actually finding in some ways this reverse harder than the prep. Because as far as all of my friends and family are concerned, like, show's done, we helped you, thanks for coming, which they did. I am so grateful. The reverse is just as important, and it is a lot of work, where this is where, you know, you're wanting to gradually increase your food and you're wanting to taper down your training. You're not wanting to just go from 0 to 100. And I have pretty much gone from 0 to 100. I'm still it's not like I stopped training, but it means instead of doing 3 hours a day, sometimes I can only get there 3 hours a week. And it is what it is. And again, there is nothing I can do about it. It is absolutely not perfect. It is not how I would like to do my reverse, which is where I could be executing a lot more control in my nutrition. And I'm going to own the fact that I have not really been. I've jumped up initially, and you want to gain that weight post show initially anyway, just to sit at that healthy body fat percent. And I'm just sort of sitting stable at the moment. So at the moment I'm sitting, around 6-7 kilos up from my stage weight. And I'm just sort of sitting here, and I'm happy to sort of sit and chill here. But obviously this year where I'm wanting to have a very structured off season, I've got a lot of areas that I need to improve on and grow with. So I'm going to have to be more meticulous with my nutrition to achieve that, because what people don't realize, off seasons are honestly harder than the deficit shred aspect a lot of the time.